Live from Africa and to the rest of the world, this is CII Radio, independent, authentic, and dedicated to you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Channel Islam International, and you are listening to Education Matters, a program which is presented by the CII Youth Foundation in conjunction with the Association of Muslim Schools. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed to have in the studios today my co-presenter. By the way, I am Ibrahim Mansoor, your presenter for this evening's program. And our co-presenter is Sheikh Irshad Ahmad. Sheikh Irshad is the Vice Chairman of the Association of Muslim Schools KwaZulu-Natal and an executive member of the Association of Muslim Schools of South Africa. We're also very pleased to have in the studio with us Brother Ahmad Bayat, ex-Department of Education KZN Curriculum Specialist. Assalamu alaikum to our brothers.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Mr. Ansur, and our listeners.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ahmad will spend some time, inshallah, talking to you a little later. You must introduce yourself and tell the listeners exactly what your background is. And in particular, we're looking forward to an interesting discussion on our topic for this evening, which is comprehensive sexuality education. It's a very comprehensive, very controversial topic these days, and because the Department of Basic Education is insisting that in some form or the other, CSE must be taught in all schools from grade 4 upwards. We will be interrogating the background to this, and from the Islamic schools perspective, and for Muslim families in general, what are some of the ways in which we can deal with this rather controversial topic? On the line, we have Lauren Evandia. Good evening, Lauren. Are you on the line? Well, we're trying to link up with Lauren Evandia, who is one of the champions of Leave the Kids Alone, hashtag Leave the Kids Alone. Good evening, Lauren. Are you with us?
And hello to all the listeners. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can.
Hi.
Thank you very much for being patient while we link up with you. It's a long way from Windermere Road in Durban all the way to the Cape. Which part of the Cape are you from, by the way?
Well, I'm actually from the Eastern Cape, but I've been living in Cape Town for the past 10 years.
Okay. And which part of Cape Town?
In the northern suburbs.
Oh, okay. Very good. All right, Lauren. Just give us some idea about what prompted you to start this movement, hashtag Leave the Kids Alone.
It's hashtag Leave Our Kids Alone, and the reason I started the group was because I have 4 of my own children in junior school, and the thought of them learning a very warped, westernized, sexualized ideology that comes from the United Nations just sickens me, because it goes in direct contradiction to the values that I am teaching them. And I know that if this is rolled out across the country, it's going to destroy the future of our nation, because the youth are the future.
It's a very laudable, very noble objective that you have, and I think many of us would share some of your views. Although the question I'd like to pose, there was a time when we lived in very conservative, in a very conservative environment, when in apartheid South Africa, morality, fortunately or unfortunately in those days, morality was at an all-time high of morality of sorts. The issues around sexuality weren't seen as so much as of a problem as it is today. Nowadays, children have access to more information than you and I ever had when we were young. With the advent of social media, etc.
Yes.
But please just give us a background as to what your intentions are and how do you intend to conscientize people about this project?
Okay, well, the one thing I would like to just add to your comment about the access children have to information and social media, parents give that access, and parents can take that access away. And it's up to parents to make responsible choices. With Leave Our Kids Alone, one thing I'd like to clarify is that the Department of Basic Education keeps on saying that the content in the new material does not sexualize children. But I want to say that no matter how many times you repeat a lie, it does not become the truth. And if anyone takes it upon themselves to read the scripted lesson plans that have been funded by the United States Agency of International Development, if you read those SLPs, you will see that it does sexualize children. Every parent that I've come across that has read the material agrees, because it introduces sexual concepts to children as young as 9 and 10 years old who wouldn't normally be thinking about sexual activities. So the entire content is problematic, and it also normalizes a perverse and sick sexualized culture. And it undermines the rights of parents to be the ones to initiate sexual education on children. So we're dealing with various things. We have the ideology aspect, where the UN's Comprehensive Sexuality CSE is completely contrary to most conservative cultures and religions in South Africa. Then you have the political implication, where the forcing of CSE in a compulsory curriculum is undermining the rights of parents to be the primary caregivers and educators of their children. And Angie Macheko herself has said that children are the government's responsibility, which, in my opinion, is a complete violation of human rights and individual liberty, which we are supposed to have in our democracy.
Lauren, we're very fortunate that we have in the studio an education specialist, an ex-curriculum specialist from the Department of Education, who is involved very heavily. He may have one or two comments or questions. Mr. Ahmed Bayat, who is working with life orientation as well as CSE. Just to tell you that we, when I say we are talking about the Association of Muslim Schools, which is the host of the program that we have this evening, are also concerned about all the reports we've read. There has been obviously quite a bit of research done, and we are also exploring ways and means in which we can negotiate the government's, try and find a balance between what the government wants to do and between our own value system. So I'm just sure whether
I don't think a balance can be obtained. We need to fight this, and we need to stand up as parents and as individuals and as leaders and tell the government no, because we have that democratic right. We are the voters, we are the electorate, and they need to listen to us. So there's no negotiating going on here, and Leave Our Kids Alone has that policy of not negotiating with the enemy, and the government has declared themselves an enemy to us and to our children. We are not backing down. It needs to be removed from the schools completely, because it will enforce the complete annihilation of this country, and that is exactly what the United Nations wants. And our government, unfortunately, is being used as a puppet by the United Nations.
All right. Ahmed, do you have any questions for Lauren or any comments you'd like to make?
I'd love to hear his comments.
I'd like to just put this CSE into perspective. Our country faces a huge challenge with regard to HIV/AIDS and teenage pregnancy. The stats are staggering. If you look at the number of, I'm looking at the 2017 stats from the Statistician General. 97,000, just over 97,000 teenagers gave birth to children. Of them, just over 3,000 were between the ages of 10 and 14.
That's shocking.
And together with that, we have rampant HIV and AIDS, which is decimating our youth. So it's with this background that government sees it necessary to introduce CSE, because from the year
obviously
2000,
the government is failing. They cannot see the fact that 10 to 14-year-olds are pregnant and having HIVs. It means people are raping them. There are grown men raping them. So why not fix the justice system? Why not fix up social services? Why not pump money into making sure there are social workers in every school? There are so many alternatives other than CSE. And what you said, sir, is exactly what the United Nations directs every single government across the world, in Canada, in Australia, and in America, to say. So you're following their script 100%, because you're saying exactly what the spokesperson says, exactly what the minister says, and it's a script you are following. And that statistic you gave me with regards to teenage pregnancies, if I'm not mistaken, isn't even a percentage of teenage girls. So what we are dealing with when you're talking about the pregnant teenagers, it's not because their parents aren't teaching them about sex. It's because their parents are not teaching them values of chastity and abstinence. And we need to look at that issue of parents failing their children and failing to teach their children essential values that will help them become successful individuals one day. You cannot teach victims about sex when they are victims of sexual crimes. And you cannot teach victims about sex when they are being exploited by perpetrators that are running free because our justice system is failing us and the people of South Africa.
All right. Lauren, I also have in the studio Sheikh Irshad Ahmad, an educationist himself and a member of the Association of Muslim Schools. Sheikh, would you like to
Good
comment?
evening, Lauren. I just got one question here. I mean, I can hear the passion that you are talking about this issue. Is there an agenda that the UN has regarding this? Maybe, some of our listeners are unsure. Is there an agenda that the UN has regarding this CSE?
Well, you'll have to look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And I would recommend that every person listening to this radio interview goes and does their own research. The United Nations doesn't hide what they are doing. And they think what they are doing is wonderful, but they are doing it at the expense of the freedom of the people. And if you look at what's happening in Canada and Australia and America, because they are probably 10 or 20 years ahead of us with comprehensive sexuality education, if you look at the trend, there are more children that are confused, more children that are becoming transgender, not because that they were, not because they were born like that, because it's an agenda that's being pushed. Because at the end of the day, it's going to enrich certain corporations and it's going to destroy nations. What the United Nations depends on, because if you look at it as a business, what they depend on is broken countries and weak nations. And how do you disempower a country? You attack the family values. It's a simple principle. You attack a country by attacking the family, because a strong family is built upon strong families. A strong country, is built upon strong families. And we can see that attack happening. The government is doing a job attacking family through poverty and perpetuating the cycle of poverty. And the UN is just going and making it so much worse by attacking the very basic family structure, by attacking gender norms, by saying things like you can be a boy and identify as a girl, and be a girl and identify as a boy, and then still say it's wrong to teach otherwise. That is an attack on the family unit, and we as religious people need to stand up for what is right, what is biological fact, the fact that there are men and there are women, and men and women should be married, and that's okay, and that's not politically incorrect. But our society is telling us that it's politically incorrect, and we need to stand up for those religious principles and religious values. Otherwise, we're going to see ourselves as slaves in the next 10 or 20 years.
We agree entirely with you, Lauren. We also, this dilemma, which is a constitutional right now of us to recognize gay relationships and LGBT rights, we're also grappling with that, because obviously, in terms of the Constitution, LGBT has that community has a right to its freedom of choice. However,
I agree that they can have that right. They can have that right, but what we say is leave our kids alone. Don't put those teachings in a compulsory curriculum. That's what we're saying. Leave our kids alone. Let us raise our kids according to our own values. Don't force it on us. Where there are issues, where there are problems, make sure that social workers are employed to identify problem children, to identify homes where there's child abuse and child neglect, and deal with that on a social services basis, not in a compulsory state education, not part of a compulsory curriculum. And I don't think people fully outweigh the impact that's going to have, because children are going to learn comprehensive sexuality education for a span of 8 years. And as the Department of Basic Education says themselves, CSE is not sex ed, and it's not merely teaching kids about puberty. It's so much more than that. It's teaching them about sexuality, about relationships, about abuse, but in such a way that it's going to warp their very concept of the sacredness of the sexual act itself. And we're going to see if this actually goes through, and if this actually becomes something that's implemented. In less than 10 years, we're going to see the complete breakdown of South Africa.
Lauren, I must thank you so much for bringing so much of passion to this topic, and we wish you well in your endeavors. Obviously, this is not going to be the last word on the topic, because there are so many opinions about this. When you talk of social welfare, looking at the magnitude of the problem that we have in our country, where we have such a large percentage of people reliant on the social welfare grants, it gives you some idea of the scale of the magnitude of the challenge that faces the government. But Lauren, we wish you well. Thank you so much for contributing to our program, and may you be blessed.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the listeners. And I really implore all the listeners to please go do your research. Go look on leaveourkidsalone.co.za, where you can download the scripted lesson plans for yourself, which come from the Department of Basic Education. Read them and see what the department wants to teach your children. They are taking our power as parents away from us. This is a very urgent matter. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. That was Lauren Evandia, who is one of the founders of this hashtag. It's a movement called Leave Our Children Alone. Dear listeners, we will be going for an ad break, after which we are going to engage Ahmad Bayat and Sheikh Irshad Ahmad